Hello, my name is Brittany Butler, and I'm going to give a presentation on assessing English learners. So the first question that many parents and teachers have is, what is the point of assessing English learners? Well, much like any other learner, assessments are used to monitor growth and to determine whether or not the English learner should still qualify to be an English learner. The information that's gathered from the assessments will help determine which direction is needed when it comes to teaching an English learner. What is the basis of assessing English learners? Well, the basis is to determine whether or not the child meets the California English Language Development Standards, which have three parts: interacting in meaningful ways, learning about how English works, and using foundational literacy skills. So we use assessments to see if students are meeting these standards. There are also stages in which English learners can perform these standards. The first is emerging, the second is expanding, and the third is bridging. The goal is to get the English learner to that bridging phase, which means that they can use a range of high-level English language skills and can fully engage in a variety of contexts. Many parents ask how their child will be assessed. There are three different ways that your child can be assessed, and the first one is the short cycle assessment, which involves observations, student discussions, and daily lessons. The second one is medium cycle, which is an assessment portfolio where materials are collected to look at throughout the learning experience. And the last one is a long cycle assessment, which is the LPAC, which is a standardized test. Let's take a look at the short cycle assessment. So this looks like your typical assessments, teacher-student interactions, so that teachers can check for understanding, structured peer-to-peer discussions, and standards-based classroom tasks. So things such as simple tests or quizzes or just any sort of formative assessment. Why are short cycle assessments used? Well, informal assessments are used to guide instruction. Teachers can use these assessments to drive their teaching and their lessons. So it's really important for teachers to have these short cycle assessments so that they know the next move for those students. The formative assessment is a process, it's planned, and it uses evidence to make instructional adjustments. And it also involves giving specific student feedback. So students should be receiving feedback frequently when they are doing the formative assessments. The medium cycle assessment, an example of something for the medium cycle assessment would be a portfolio. And a portfolio is just a collection of that student's work throughout the year. It is scored with rubrics, checklists, or rating scales. And this is a great way for students to see their progress throughout the year, a great way for them to set goals from the beginning of the year towards the end of the year. And it's also a wonderful thing for parents to see. They can see their students' work from the beginning of the year and then see what they've accomplished towards the end of the year. So the medium cycle assessment should have clear goals, evidence of tasks aligned to the California English Language Development Standards. It should have self-reflection forms for students to fill out, peer review forms for peers to give feedback on those students, and then scoring guide or rubric. And you can see here that there is an example of an evaluation scoring guide. When looking at the portfolio, the teacher should determine if the student has met the goals and the standards of the unit. Do the students need help meeting those goals still? What help do they need? In what ways can the teacher improve to meet those needs? So it's a reflection cycle, and it's a reflection both on the student's part and on the instructor's part. Lastly is the long assessment cycle. This is the LPAC, and this is what a lot of teachers try to prepare their English learners for. It's a state assessment used to test English language proficiency. There are two tests: initial identification, so this is when you determine whether or not the student is an English learner. And then the second is the annual summative assessment, and this determines their progress and determines whether or not they test out of that category of an English learner. The LPAC focuses on listening, speaking, and reading and writing. So there are those four categories, and it determines whether the English learner is emerging, expanding, or bridging, back to those three phases that English learners go through. LPACs are aligned with the standards, so the LPAC can essentially help in the classroom. The scores can tell what standards the student is meeting, and so that also can help teachers drive their instruction. It's important that the scores and the goals are stated in their portfolio as well. Here are a couple of websites that families can use for resources. The first one is the National Website for Families of English Learners. And this is a wonderful website that has both English translation and Spanish translation, and it just has a bunch of different resources for parents and families just in general to look at. And then the next one is the California Department of Education LPAC page. So this website just gives more information on that LPAC standardized test that English learners have to learn. Standardized tests are sometimes very difficult for families to understand, so this is a website for them to go to just to learn more and have a better understanding of the LPAC. And then lastly are my citations. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something about assessing English learners.